Hey folks, welcome to Unqualified, the fantasy football podcast that's been speaking to you from the future since 2017. I'm your producer, Rob Diesendorf, here with Sean Brady and Scott Johnson, two fantasy football rivals that have been sabotaging each other for years, but they decided to come together to help you win your league and make your friends look like idiots. How's it going, fellas?
Great. Good. Great. We're looking into the future. What was that again? That was a good one.
We're speaking to the people from the future. We're actually pre-recording this episode. This is our 2018 recap pod. You're probably listening to this the week or post-Christmas. So if you had Christmas already, Merry Christmas.
Happy holidays.
Happy Kwanzaa Jewish holidays and all of that.
Happy Festivus.
And every Festivus. Happy Flying Spaghetti Monster Christmas.
That's a good one, too.
Holiday.
Growth industry for that.
What is that called? Any cults out there that maybe celebrate something around Christmas? Happy whatever that is to you. Yeah, it's, I'm so far out of this fantasy football stuff. I don't even know what's going on anymore. What's happening, guys?
Luckily, you have us, two psychos that are already looking into next year before our season's even wrapped up. So we're recording this actually before Scott and I play in the Hoboken Championship. So you're going to have to stay tuned to find out how that matchup went. Johnson Brady 2.0.
In the channels. Go to hell, Sean. You're going to lose.
I really hope that future Scott and future Sean are listening to this, knowing that future Sean won his second title in a row.
I hope future
How
Sean
great would
is
that be?
crying all next week because he lost both finals.
Oh, that's cold.
Mm-hmm.
That's cold. I hope you win OG. I don't hope you lose that one. Come on now.
All right, thanks. I appreciate that. Yeah, well, because Chris won it last year. We can't let that happen again. Knock on wood. I'm so superstitious at this point of the season. It's stupid.
Anyway, so we're looking over.
I think we should place some bets.
Oh God,
we could do that.
Oh
for our
God,
future selves. We're getting in a weird time vortex. I like it with betting and money and
my mind is in a pretzel.
Shit
right
talking. Yeah, I don't. What are we doing? What's going on?
Who do I think is going to win?
Yeah, you could will it into existence.
Scott, I'll bet you a nice dinner.
Ooh, okay.
And by nice dinner, I mean not like a white tablecloth.
Talking about like Chipotle.
I'm talking about like soul food, like someone's gonna feed the soul.
Like hearty. We could put a dinner on the Hoboken matchup. Yeah,
like a nice. I like that. For example, I'm back in on pizza, so a nice pizza dinner, pizza and beer, maybe a Chinese food and whatever accompanying alcoholic beverage we can pair with that.
You know where we could go? We could go to Maroni's.
Ooh,
that's the three of us, and then that's good. The loser has to pay for it.
Oh,
I like that.
Losers. First off, loser's not paying for Rob. That's gotta be
paying his own way.
Maybe we'll have Rob pay for the winner and the loser. How would that be? That'd be
what?
Yeah.
That's bullshit.
Scott, do you think that's good?
I think I could. Yeah. Future
I'll
son of
never
Scott
edit
like that.
I'll never edit another podcast the rest of my life.
Good job.
Anyway.
Good job, past Sean. Good idea. Future.
I'll chip in.
Future Sean.
So hopefully,
I'll chip in.
Hopefully, that's me enjoying a nice, delicious Maroni's meal, courtesy of Scott and Rob. However, that's not what this podcast is about. This podcast is about looking forward to 2019 by taking a look back at the entirety of 2018. We're going to do a lot of reflection on this pod and a lot of things that you don't want to think about because you're probably burnt out just like we are. But we're doing the work, looking forward to next year
for you,
and giving you some tips to keep in mind in the off season because honestly, we just want to be the first podcast out there to look ahead
to the future.
Okay, we said it's a 2018 recap. Obviously, we're trying to help you in 2019 by looking back at 2018. Let's start with lessons from 2018. Scott, what did we learn this year that's going to make us better fantasy players next year?
I learned that I need to take a tight end earlier.
Yeah,
I think I finally learned my lesson. It's been 3 or 4 years since I've taken a tight end early. The best years I had in fantasy were when I took Dallas Clark and Antonio Gates back in the day in like the 5th, 6th round. So those top guys, Zach Ertz, Travis Kelce, Gronk had an off year, but George Kittle went a little late. But you can't really rely on that. I mean, you have to take one of the top tier guys. And that next year is Travis Kelce, Zach Ertz, maybe Gronk again, George Kittle. You can maybe say Jared Cook will be in that discussion because he pulled a Delaney Walker type season and turned his career around, so to speak. But yeah, take a tight end early, and then quarterback, I don't take it too early. Not one of the top guys, but I think what I've learned is to take a guy that has more continuity than a guy like Matthew Stafford. Never take Matthew Stafford again. And then litter it with upside in your. You got to take two quarterbacks. Litter it with upside in your second quarterback pick. So maybe like a Baker Mayfield next year or Josh Allen that could take that next step, like a Pat Mahomes did this year.
Love that. Yeah, for me, I have more of like a metaphysical thing that I learned this year is that there's no one route to a fantasy title. For example, I nailed our OG draft this year. My first 4 picks were Alvin Kamara, Melvin Gordon, Tyreek Hill, Adam Thielen. And like for 99% of the season, you couldn't have had a better first 4 rounds. Like I don't actually think there's any possible way I could have been better. Yet I'm not in the championship in that league. And I am in the championship in 2 other leagues, one league in which I picked LaShawn McCoy in the 3rd round, and another league.
Oh my God, that's right.
Another league in which I picked Amari Cooper and Corey Davis in back-to-back rounds, and like it was like 5 or 6 or 4 and 5, and they both aren't on my roster. So the biggest thing that I learned this year is that obviously there are many routes to a fantasy championship. I think the one thing that I think is always in common is just what you just said, and we're going to talk more about this in a little bit, nailing that quarterback spot, because if you get the value like I did out of Pat Mahomes, newsflash, he's on both my teams that made it to the championship round. Like Carson Wentz the year before was on my Brady Bros championship team that lost in the finals, but I got there, and it's because of all that value that I got having a top 3 quarterback or a top 1 quarterback this year, getting him in like the 12th round. It's the best way to win in fantasy football.
And here's the other thing. Tom Brady was taken second for quarterbacks for the most part in like round 7.
He's a bench player.
And not saying that was a bad pick by any means. Round 7 was pretty much what we thought was a steal for Tom Brady. But he had by all accounts, a disappointing fantasy season. Yeah. Mitch Trubisky wasn't drafted. Better than him. Jared Goff wasn't even drafted. Did better than him. Trying to think who else. Kirk Cousins also went late-ish, and he had a good beginning of the season, but he collapsed pretty completely towards the end of the season. I mean, barring whatever he did in Week 16, which we don't know about. But these guys that you're projecting to be your fantasy starters, there are guys that are going to be later. Phillip Rivers, Drew Brees, these are guys that you could have gotten so much later that are littered with upside. So I think it's important to take 2 quarterbacks, like we said before, and like you just echoed. Make sure one of them is a bona fide starter, but not necessarily going to crush it like Tom Brady like too early. And then, again, litter it with upside. Take a Mitch Trubisky or Baker Mayfield late.
Love that. So let's keep moving here. We have a bunch of little mini segments we're going to go through, and this one is near and dear to our heart here. I love this one. The official Dead to Me All-Star team. Guys that obviously there's a lot of guys on this roster, right? But we're talking about the 2018 version. Guys that are just absolutely dead to me or Scott or both of us. And Scott, I have to let you start with the quarterback here.
Yeah. I don't quite know why I was on such a bandwagon for Matthew Stafford this year, but that turned out to be one of the worst calls of my fantasy football career. And I know, shout out, friend of the pod, Craig Steinberg, we were kind of all in on Stafford. He's on his dead to me list. He's on my dead to me list too. And I did some research backwards. I looked at his years previous. The best season he had was 2011, if I'm not mistaken, if I remember correctly. He had 41 touchdowns. He has always had double-digit interceptions. He's had some years where he's had 22 or 24 touchdowns to 12 interceptions. He's had years like this. So shame on me for thinking he was going to crush it. But yeah, he's dead to me. Sorry, are we getting into wide receivers or just sticking with quarterbacks?
Oh, we can go right to wide receivers. I know Amari Cooper is...
Amari Cooper.
Yikes.
Amari Cooper. Pretty much just Amari Cooper. Yeah, Corey Davis is a tough one. Devin Funchess was a bad call as well, but yeah, these guys are on my dead to me. I think Devin Funchess and Amari Cooper are both on my list.
Yeah, I'm with you on Cooper. I am sort of swinging back around on him, but it does suck that I dropped him the week that he was traded to the Cowboys. So that's
yeah,
doesn't sit right with me.
And it's just because he knocked me out of contention in one of my leagues, and I would have won the week after. I'm kind of salty about it because it happened in the last 5 minutes of that Eagles game. But whatever.
Okay, let's look at the running back situation here. And there's a few that could wind up here. I mean, LaShawn McCoy is, I don't even want to waste breath talking about him. He's been dead to me since the second I drafted him. I knew it was a mistake and very quickly moved on from him. But this guy, Deion Lewis, man, what is going on? Like, first off, okay, so
the hell are you?
He was good last year on the Patriots. Like, flat out good. He was essentially what James White was the first half of this year, except he can actually run the ball a little bit better. And we were all excited about the Thunder and Lightning duo on Tennessee. He got every crack at it to be the lead back here. He got priority over Derrick Henry for like 85% of the year, and he did nothing with it. He had 2 games, I think, over 20 points the entire year, getting that lion's share of the work. And obviously Derrick Henry, when he gets that volume, is a stud, as we've seen. So Deion Lewis, like, just go away. You're now in the Chris Thompson zone.
Ooh, he's in the Chris Thompson zone. Yeah, I'll echo that. Deion Lewis. You can make the argument. Listen, the last 2 weeks have been fantastic for Derrick Henry, but you can make the argument. I mean, I dropped him 3 weeks ago before he had this outburst out of nowhere.
Yeah,
you can make the argument that he's on that list too. Like you're not going to draft him again, but he only. I mean, in the 12 games before his outburst, he only had over 62 yards once. Yeah. Just once, and it was like 63 yards. That's what I mean by that. So, I don't know. Do what you will with him. That whole Titans team is weird for skill position players.
Yeah, I agree. And I know I threw a little dig at Chris Thompson there. You're cemented in this list as well, Chris Thompson. Jesus Christ, man. Like, I really rode hard for him in the offseason. I was like, dude, no, he's a low-end RB1 PPR, and like, you know.
He's like Darren Sproles.
Yeah. Not quite.
Can't stay healthy.
Brutal. Anyway, let's switch gears here, rather, and we're going to talk about the bright side of things here. We're the pleasure to have in class awards. This one's near and dear to my heart as a first-year teacher. So we're talking about the guys that you own this year that are just warm your heart. It's like having a nice sip of hot cocoa on a cold winter day. And I'm going to start things off with my absolute favorite player this year, Christian McCaffrey. He is the Todd Gurley from last year. He was a late second round running back that just absolutely exploded this year. We can't say we didn't see it coming. He was good his rookie year, but he has been a revelation for the Panthers.
Yeah, unreal. I'll do another running back, Philip Lindsay. I mean, he did do poorly the past 2 weeks, but if you picked him up week 1 or 2, and it was my bad on Royce Freeman. I was on the bandwagon for him, but he's what Royce Freeman should have been this year. Undrafted guy, hometown hero. And then, we were, honestly, we don't have to say more about Pat Mahomes. We were both right on him. It was our yearly quarterback stud call like we did with Carson Wentz the year before. And wide receiver, I know I'll let you do the tight end one. Wide receiver, Robert Woods, ultimate under-the-radar guy.
I love Robert Woods.
The most consistent wide receiver out there, and a rock-solid wide receiver 2, teetering on the edge of wide receiver 1.
He's a guy that, like, I have him in the Brady Bros League, and I have him in my lineup, and I just feel so good having him there. I know every single
just feel
week
safe.
He's going to get at least like 65, 70 yards, and he's going to catch the ball a ton, and maybe he gets in the end zone, maybe he doesn't, but he will never kill your team, ever.
Yep.
And that's more than be said for, like, almost every player in fantasy. So Robert Woods,
especially wide receivers this past year.
So I'm all in on Robert Woods as well. He is like that ultimate under-the-radar guy. Well, another thing real quick, and we'll talk about the prototypes in a minute. George Kittle, though.
Beast.
Oh, my God. There's a reason we didn't talk about the tight ends on the Dead to Me All-Star team, because it's all of them. Every single tight end. Like, except for George Kittle and maybe Travis Kelce and Zach Ertz. George Kittle, man, breakout star. He is for real. He's here to stay, and I'm very excited about him. Before we move on, Scott, I just want to key in on 2 different things here. So first, just a quick note here. Philip Lindsay, he's the prototypical week 1 pickup that carried you to the promised land. And I'm not saying I'm going to know who that person is next year, because honestly, they always come out of nowhere. But do not be afraid to pull the trigger on a guy that goes and has a great week 1. So for example, like, I know it wasn't week 1 for Alvin Kamara a couple of years ago or 2 years ago, but you saw him start to play well, even though he's the 3rd guy in the depth chart and he's behind 2 established starters. Like, pull the trigger. what's the worst thing that happens? Do you drop him a couple weeks later and pick up somebody else? Buy that ticket early, because Philip Lindsay, if you picked him up week 1, you are loving having him on your roster.
Yeah, it got me to OG finals. He's the main reason I was in OG finals, because he was just it came out of nowhere. He was a free agent pickup. I will say, Alvin Kamara 2 years ago, or I guess last year, the reason he was a stud was because Adrian Peterson got traded in week 4, and then there's only Mark Ingram and him, right? Yeah. This year,
Nick Chubb,
Carlos Hyde, Duke Johnson, and Nick Chubb. And for some weird reason, in one of my leagues, I picked up Nick Chubb like 3 days before they traded Carlos Hyde, because I was like, you know what? He's littered with upside. My running backs are Deion Lewis and Mark Ingram, and they kind of suck. Like, why not? Why not pick him up? And I ended up trading him away because I needed a wide receiver in a full point PPR for Emmanuel Sanders. Like, I think I said this on the pod. At the time, it was a good trade. Turned out to not be a good trade because whatever. Anyway, but those are the guys you look for, like littered with upside, maybe rookies, maybe first-year guys, and you never know what's going to happen. The NFL changes daily. Kareem Hunt got released.
Yeah.
Spencer Ware was a great pickup. Like, pick up those guys that are littered with upside.
And then the last thing I want to talk about here, I'm not saying we need to make our yearly quarterback stud call right now, but we're 2 for 2, Scott. And it's like
we're 2 for 2. We're 2 for 2.
And it's not like we said like, oh, you know who might be a decent starter, like this guy. Like, no, we called
they're being studs.
MVP caliber quarterbacks coming out of nowhere. Guys you could have got in the 12th, 14th round of your draft. So all I'm going to say is make sure you listen to us when we talk about quarterbacks next summer.
Yep. And we said Drew Brees in round 13 was a steal.
Yeah.
He was. Mitch Trubisky was also going to have a good year. He did.
We got a couple names brewing for next year. I know you just threw out Baker. I like Jimmy G coming back, playing for Kyle Shanahan's offense. He's had 2 years to kind of marinate there. It's obviously dependent on them getting him maybe a wide receiver to pair with Kittle, but those are the type of guys we're looking at. They're on our radar. Baker, Jimmy G. I know you're still a big Mitch guy. Josh Allen. All these guys.
I think Darnold, if they get some offseason weapons, is going to have a pretty good year next year. If they get like Le'Veon, let's say, and then just draft a wide receiver. Finally, please draft a wide receiver, Jets.
God, I really hope
so. Then he could have a good year, but I think Baker's going to be top 10 next year.
Yeah.
I'm calling it now.
So we'll obviously cement those choices as we get closer. I have a feeling I'm going to be the Jimmy G stan for this pod, but love that. All right, let's keep moving here. We're going to look at, this is a segment I just want to call, it's a quick one, right? Fantasy Football Scouting 101. So what we're talking about here is what type of things you're watching for during the NFL playoffs. So let me give you an example. A couple of years ago, I wanted to see how Kelvin Benjamin was used on the Panthers in the playoffs. They threw to him a ton, right? So, for example, this is maybe not the best example because Kelvin is going to be out of the league at some point soon. However, they threw to him a ton, and I said, based on his awesome rookie year and the fact that they were really leaning on him in the NFL playoffs, this guy's a safe player next year. Now, he got a little bit banged up that next year, but he was definitely as advertised, and he's let himself go since then. However, that's the type of thing you're looking for, is guys that you maybe aren't sure about, that if a team shows that they're trusting them in playoff time, that's what you want to see from guys for future fantasy football purposes.
Yeah. And I will say, along that vein, Corey Davis was used a lot in the playoffs for the Titans last year. I think they only had 1 or 2 games. And, this season has been kind of a disappointment, but it did show. His target share was still there. It was just Mariota's play that was kind of poor, and the running game at the beginning of the season was in shambles. So, not a bad play. Here's the thing. It could go both ways. The playoffs can overrate players in your mind, like Kelvin Benjamin, who didn't have a good year the next year. I think he got hurt that year, actually. So, no fault of his own. Corey Davis didn't have a great year this year. He had some flashes, but it can overrate a couple things. One thing I will say, like for the teams that are locked into the playoffs, and we're talking about actual NFL playoffs, right?
Yeah.
Mike Williams on the Chargers.
Oh,
See how much they use him with Keenan Allen in tandem, because it could shift in the way of Mike Williams next year over Keenan Allen. Keenan Allen is a very different player than Mike Williams, but like we said in the beginning of the season, Mike Williams is going to have a better year than Corey Davis, and he ended up having that, in my opinion.
Yeah, I love that. And in a similar vein, look at how the Steelers use Juju Smith-Schuster as opposed to Antonio Brown, because like I said, even for our Week 16 preview, a lot of matchups kind of lend themselves to Juju having the better game. If a team has a good number one corner or just a good zone deep defense that'll take away more of a deep threat and they need to work the underneath with Juju, that type of thing is something to keep in mind. We've seen it happen before with DeAndre Hopkins and Andre Johnson. We've seen it all over the place in the NFL, so keep that in mind. All right. Last thing to keep in mind here before we move into our way too early top 10s, we're talking about movers and shakers here. The biggest off-the-field storylines that we're looking for in advance of 2019. Scott, what do you think?
I'm gonna talk about QB carousel. I mean, you got guys like Jameis Winston, Marcus Mariota, Dak Prescott, Blake Bortles, potentially Nick Foles, all ready for free agency. I mean, they got a lot of them have like 4th or 5th year options that I'm sure the teams that they are on will not pick up.
Maybe
Winston
Flacco
being one of them. Maybe Flacco as well. Yeah, I mean they got a controversy now. Cardinals and Bills don't have as much in terms of like competition, but I'm looking for where Winston, Mariota, Dak, Bortles, and potentially Foles are going to go. I think if Foles shows something in the playoffs and in the end of the regular season, like he did last year, if they can make a playoff push, then I think a team will give him a shot. But I'm looking at QB carousel and then head coach carousel. I mean, Steve Wilkes on the Cardinals. Who knows if he'll have a job? First year coach as well on the Lions. What's his name?
Oh God, Patricia.
Matt Patricia, who knows if he's going to have a job. So I'm looking at head coaches and then who's going to come up from college. Maybe Oklahoma coach?
Oh, God, I hope so. Lincoln Riley, please.
Lincoln?
Come to the Jets. You can replace Todd
Please.
Bowles.
Yep.
Wow, that would be a dream come true there. For me, there is one name that is one domino that needs to fall here, and it's Le'Veon Bell. He is absolutely number one here. He's a top 5 running back still. I know he's getting up there in age. I know he didn't play last year, but depending on where he goes, he's a top 5 running back. There's only a few teams he could go to in which he would not be a top 5 running back. And even then, he'd probably be a top 8 or 9 running back. So I'm very intrigued with what happens here with Le'Veon Bell. If he goes to a team like the Eagles, even the Jets, like I'm all in.
I was just going to say those two. Yep.
That would be phenomenal. And honestly, I'm just going to throw this out there because I feel like it might happen. The Chiefs. Can you imagine?
That's a hot take. Oh, my God. Yeah. I was just going to ask you where you think he's going, and I'll give you my two. And it was literally going to be the Eagles or the Jets. Teams that he's been kind of linked to this year, maybe in trade talks. But
yeah,
the Jets have a ton of money. I don't know what the Eagles look like next year for money-wise, but they'll probably get rid of Ajayi. Josh Adams, yeah, he's good, but like not a complete running back. That could get them over to the playoff push if they don't make the playoffs this year. But yeah, those two teams, that could be insane.
I don't think that the Chiefs can pay him, but can you imagine?
Wow. My brain's exploding thinking about that right now.
I think he would vault himself to probably number 2 overall behind Gurley for me. There.
Yeah.
Him like right there with Saquon, I would say.
Saquon and Christian McCaffrey, yeah. It'd be tough.
Oh boy. Le'Veon, come to New York. I know KC might be fun, but New York is it's a good time.
Better. Way better.
Okay, let's get into our way too early top 10s by position here. And
love it.
We got a lot of similarities here in each position, so we won't bore you to death reading off the particular order. For me, quarterback-wise, honestly, after Pat Mahomes, Andrew Luck, and Carson Wentz, the order really doesn't matter to me. I don't think you need to waste a high draft pick on anyone else, maybe not even those guys included. And I don't think you really need to worry about which one of the rest of the guys you get. I think they're all kind of in a similar pack. It honestly just depends on how things break for their teams. I will say 2 guys that I have in my top 10 that you don't, Scott, Jimmy Garoppolo and Drew Brees. I think Brees will still be okay. Still got Michael Thomas. Still got Alvin Kamara. Maybe Mark Ingram isn't there, so they lean on the pass game a little bit more next year. And Jimmy Garoppolo is just a guy that I'm a huge fan of.
Guy's dude.
He's such a dude. He is honestly he's in a perfect situation for a quarterback. We're seeing Nick Mullins succeed there, so I think Garoppolo can do very well. With Kittle emerging, that combo is going to be deadly. It might be the new Wentz-Ertz combo that can do some damage. So I love Jimmy G. The rest of our top 10 is kind of a wash. We got Russ, Deshaun, Rodgers. We got Goff. It's all a lot of the same names.
Yep, I agree. Newton's in there, Cam Newton. 2 guys that I have that you don't have are Mitch Trubisky. I think he can make another kind of push forward. So you look at Jared Goff's rookie year and then his second year. The difference is, it's very similar to Trubisky's rookie year a year later. and then his second year. So I think I'm not saying he's going to take a huge step forward like Jared Goff did in the beginning of the season. The end of the season, obviously Goff really faltered a little bit, but I think Trubisky can vault himself squarely into the top 10, maybe like 7 or 8. And then Baker Mayfield, I think he's going to have a huge year next year. It's just a gut feeling. I'm a huge Baker fan. Give him an offseason with Freddie Kitchens or whatever offensive coordinator you want. Get some stability around that organization. You know, you got Duke Johnson. Hopefully they'll figure out how to actually use him, and you'll have, Nick Chubb in a second year, which Nick Chubb could have an insane year. I like Baker a lot.
Okay, so that rounds out our quarterbacks. We'll obviously go into more depth as the offseason rolls on here. Let's look at the running backs here, and it's kind of a wash at the top. We got Gurley, Barkley, McCaffrey, Elliott,
Zeke,
then Kamara. I mean, the only difference, like ranking-wise, is I have Bell at 5. You have him a little bit lower, but obviously we don't even know where he's going to be next year, so that it'll all be subject to change. 2 names that I have that you don't, Scott. I have Joe Mixon and David Johnson. I think David Johnson has a bounce-back year. He has been quietly, ranked 10th or 11th all year, and it has been a nightmare year for him. What I kind of see this year being is similar to what happened with DeAndre Hopkins a few years back when he had Brock Osweiler. He was awful. Couldn't start him. Easily the worst year of his career. I think that's what this year is for David Johnson, and the fact that year is still hanging around the top 10 says it all. I think he has a good bounce-back year next year, and I hope that's not just wishful thinking, because I really like him as a player.
Yeah, I like that. I think he'll be top 15. It scares me this year, and it kind of scares me that we've only had 1 year of tape where he's been like a top 3 guy. Then he got hurt, right? He had his rookie year, which was okay, or not really good at all, and then second year, which was his insanely good year. Third year, he got hurt. Now this is his 4th year, which was pretty good, not great. Who knows? I think he'll be top 15, but they need a lot around him to help him.
Yeah.
Hopefully Josh Rosen takes the next step forward. I don't think he will, really, so that's why I have him a little lower. And then I got, basically 9 and 10, we have the same guys, 1 through 8. I got Dalvin Cook at 9, and then Nick Chubb at 10.
I love both those guys.
Yeah, Chubb showed a ton. There's no competition now. Full offseason, Baker will get better. That offensive scheme, like I just said with Baker, should get better, and stability-wise, it'll be more stable, for lack of a better word. And then Dalvin Cook, if Dalvin Cook continues the end of the season push for himself like he has been, without John DeFilippo and without all these distractions and injuries, I think he could vault himself squarely into the top 10. And I'm kind of flip-flopping on what I said about him a couple weeks ago, but if he continues this workload and they continue to rush with him a lot and not just throw it with Kirk Cousins without a plan, I think Dalvin Cook could be in the top 10.
Oh, absolutely. I think both of those guys could be that next year Christian McCaffrey, Todd Gurley candidate.
Yes.
That early third, late second that can really do some damage for you moving into.
I think Mixon can be too. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep.
Definitely, if you wind up with 2 of those guys and you go wide receiver in the first round, you're doing okay, I think. So
yeah,
it's definitely gonna be it's gonna be a fun draft next year with all these good deep. It's a deep running back class for the first time in a while. So excited about that. All right, let's look at wide receivers. As I just mentioned, I love that we have the same name at the top, DeAndre Hopkins. We are all in on this guy, and pairing him with Deshaun Watson is just, thank God we got him. We rescued him from the depths of Brock Osweiler purgatory.
Rocket ship.
Oh my God. So we have similar guys here. I think one name that might ruffle some feathers is Devontae Adams. We have him ranked above Michael Thomas, above Antonio Brown, above Odell Beckham Jr., above Adam Thielen, and I don't care. Devontae Adams is awesome.
He's a sponge. He gets better every year.
Yeah, he does.
It's insane.
Yeah. So we're big fans of Devontae Adams, so don't add us, because we're right deep down. I will say there's only a couple of differences here. I think there might only be one difference, and I have Keenan Allen at 9. You have Stephon Diggs at 9. The rest of the names are pretty much a wash there. We got, obviously, a lot of the guys we just mentioned having Devontae Adams in front of them. They're all present here. All the typical studs. I think Odell bounces back too. He'll have a good year.
Yeah, I agree. The one thing I do have different is and this is like a slight thing, it's Juju Smith-Schuster ahead of Antonio Brown. I'm not saying Antonio Brown's going to have a bad year by any means. This is just a gut feeling that he maybe has more of an off year than he's had in the past. And you've seen Juju have much better games than Antonio Brown this year. I think 2 guys you're going to see a decline next year just gut feelings, is Drew Brees and Antonio Brown, who have been at the top of their games for their respective positions for a while. Drew Brees is going to be 40 next year. Antonio Brown's going to be 32 or 3. That's when wide receivers start to kind of falter, and that's definitely when quarterbacks start to falter. So I think Juju is like number 7 or 8 for me, and then Diggs. I think if this I'm such a big believer in the Vikings after they got rid of John DeFilippo. It's crazy, and it's crazy that we were talking about him as a head coach, potential head coach. Yeah. He might have been a good head coach, but he just is not using those weapons in the right way, and hopefully we see a couple more games, and then maybe they make a playoff push, and we'll see a lot. That's something to look for in the playoffs as well, how the Vikings use everyone. But
yeah,
I think Diggs can have a great year next year too. Hopefully, I mean, Kirk is Kirk. He's not going to change. He's a better version of Case Keenum, so I think they overpaid him as much as I like him as a person, but I think he could still have Thielen and Diggs as top 10 guys.
Yeah, I will say, I mean, he's supported 3,000-yard receivers on the same team in Washington, so it's definitely, I wouldn't be scared off by that. And one thing about DeFilippo here, he was a part of that Eagles team that won the Super Bowl and had easily the healthiest and deepest offensive line in the league, and that's ahead of like what Dallas was doing that year. So he was able to kind of see like what an offense could be with a healthy and firing on all cylinders offensive line. He did not adjust well to the Vikings' sorry excuse for a line, and that really I think was the big disconnect there. I still think he can be a good OC, but I agree, head coach material, maybe not. Okay, let's look at tight end, and we have to do it by. It's kind of an obligation at this point. Nobody really wants to talk about tight end, but we will anyway. And
for the listener,
look, we got the same top 3: Ertz, Kelsey, Kittle. You have Kelsey, Ertz, Kittle. Same difference there. And Gronk, I have at 4. You have him much lower, but there's not much else to talk about. OJ Howard, I think will bounce back well. Eric Ebron, you have to include him. One guy I have different is Delaney Walker. I think he comes back and he's a stabilizing force for that Tennessee offense, and I think Marcus Mariota clearly misses him this year. I think he can, even though he's getting up there in age, he'll come back and he'll be a good player. He had a kind of a freak injury that caused him to miss this year, so people are going to be sleeping on him heading into 2019.
Yeah, that's a good one. I think he's going to be 34. That's the only reason why I didn't have him in the top 10. We both have Trey Burton in there. We both have Hunter Henry in there, which I thought was interesting and right on. I think he's going to be a monster next year.
I love Henry.
Hopefully he comes back completely, yeah. We mentioned him a couple weeks ago. I don't think he's coming back this year, but still a good story. I mean, happy that he had a chance to come back this year. And then number 10, just a dart throw, Mike Gesicki on the Dolphins. Could have a little second-year push. I don't really know. Tight end is so thin that, like, who cares? Just throw a dart.
Yeah, I will say athletically, he fits the bill of like a George Kittle or a Zach Ertz. Like, he's that type of player. He's not really
fast.
A tight end. Like, he's just going to play receiver, and he's going to be on the line of scrimmage. That's the only thing different there.
Exactly. And he could, like, if you remember Tyler Eifert, he came out of nowhere and had 13 touchdowns one year.
Yeah.
Could be like a Gesicki type thing. Like Gesicki could do that. You never know.
Ooh, I love that call. I feel like that's a call. That's like a call that I would make. I feel like Delaney Walker was a bad call there. I still will probably roster Delaney Walker just because he's going to be so cheap, but I love Mike Gesicki. I love that call there.
Well, here's another thing, too. Looking forward to drafts, like the best years I've had, and you can probably attest this, too, for your teams, is when I draft 2 quarterbacks. Yep. Again, like what we just said. One that's like a solid starter, and then one that's littered with upside. And the same exact thing with tight end. I get a solid starter, and then litter it with upside in the back end. So one year I had, I forget the tight end like starter I had. It was like 2015. I drafted Tyler Eifert in like round 15 or 16 because he came out of nowhere. He had 13 touchdowns. He was starting for me that year. I think I actually had Delaney Walker that year too. Wow. So like that's a strategy for tight end that you could replicate with quarterback too.
Yeah, I will 100% be taking Ertz or Kelsey at the very beginning of round 3, or I will be taking George Kittle somewhere in like round 4 because I don't really want to wind up with somebody else on my team. Maybe OJ Howard, I kind of like. Maybe Hunter Henry later, but you're still not getting a sure thing there. So
yep.
I will definitely be investing heavily in tight end early next year just because of just the scarcity of the position. Like, it was honestly difficult for us to fill out that like 9th and 10th spot because that's how thin the position is.
Yeah, and like if you tried to end up with Jimmy Graham or Delaney Walker or Greg Olsen or Evan Engram, you were pretty disappointed. Thought it was interesting we both kept Evan Engram off. I just think his rookie year was good, but it wasn't great by any means, and then this year was just an aberration I think it'll be like top 15, but not a starter.
Oh, tight end. Let's just get rid of it.
I couldn't agree more. Just get rid of it.
What can we replace it with? Like punters?
Honestly, punter would be cool. I think like a individual defensive player.
Oh,
that'd be cool.
That would be really fun.
Like you add in
just
like J.J. Watt or like a
Khalil
Luke
Mack.
Kuechly in there. Like hell yeah, I would get so much more excited to have Khalil Mack on my team as a defensive individual player than
any tight end.
Eric Ebron. I don't know. Like, who cares?
Wow, that's going to be so fun if that actually happens. Like, I know that people do like individual defensive player leagues where they have like a full roster of defensive players.
IDP.
But I think just one is a lot of fun. That could be awesome.
Yeah, defense was also a piece of shit this year. Like, who knew when the defense was going to do well?
Yeah, exactly.
Except for the Bears. Like, that's it. Sponsor us.
Tight end. Yeah, tight end sponsor us. Bears sponsor us.
Everyone sponsors. Happy New Year.
Oh, yeah. Happy New Year coming up. Hopefully you ended 2018 fantasy-wise in a good spot. But as always, we're always looking forward to next year. I've been looking forward to next year since the middle of this year. So stay with us here.
And that wraps up the 2018 recap pod. It's been a doozy, people, and the reason we do this recap pod is for us, ourselves, but also for you guys, and on top of that, to check our predictions and our advice that we've given you guys throughout the season, because these guys, and I obviously don't give very good advice, but these two guys, Sean and Scott,
You have good life advice.
the amount of work they put in and research that they put in, they're watching all the games, they're looking stuff up, they're doing numbers, they're watching players, they're psychoanalyzing players. You get, this is a different type of fantasy advice, and it's hard to come by. And so we want to show you guys at the end of the season just how effective and how accurate our research and our advice is. And I say our, but I really mean their. So go and look at it yourself, see what helped you, what didn't help you, and I think at the end of all this, I think these two guys are super proud of all of the work that they've done. I'm super proud of it, and hopefully you guys got something out of it. So if you did, make sure you leave us a review as a thank you.
Nice.
I was going to say, that was
You're gonna
said.
make me tear up, man.
And then
Oh
you
my
just
God.
stuck them. You stuck them with the review.
Stuck 'em,
You
yep.
people out there better do what Rob says after he said such wonderful things about us.
Tugging at the heartstrings there. So you used fear tactics last episode. In episode 49, last one. This is episode 50. You're using the heartstrings there. Mm-hmm. I dig it.
I came to the realization that it's better to be loved than feared, you know?
Or both. What does Michael Scott say?
Yeah.
I want people to be afraid of how much they love me.
There you go. That should be what it is.
That's exactly what
By the
it is.
way, since we're on this topic of patting each other on the back, shout out Rob Diesendorf. 50 episodes
Yeah.
for free, edited. Not a hiccup along the way. I mean,
He's a grinder.
not a
He's
hiccup that
grinder,
listeners
folks.
would know
Couple hiccups.
about on the way. Grinding it out overnight last season. Grinded it out over 2 nights this season. Double the time, but still insane amount of effort in there, and it's been fun this season. It's been a long one, but it's been fun.
And he makes
It
us
was
sound
super
good,
fun.
which is very hard to do. So
Very, very difficult to do.
much appreciated. Especially
Happy
Scott.
to do it.
Oh, you dick. I hope. Oh my God, future Sean is going down.
I really hope that was me kicking you while you're down in the future. I cannot.
and I hope it's like
wait to
a
find
misplaced like. Ugh. I hope it's a misplaced one. I hope you get crushed by 100 points by me in Hoboken League.
Yeah, to future all of this, all of us, all of this falls apart after this episode.
Yeah.
After this, we all hate each other. Sean and Scott get in a fight after one person loses, the other. We go out to dinner. We have a horrible time.
Yeah, there can only be one
cause
winner.
a scene. We're gonna cause a scene at the restaurant. It's gonna be a mess.
Go to the movies after. We'll have a fight for a couple of weeks,
Yep.
and then we'll come back for next pod season. We'll probably do
Love
some in between, but
I will say, hopefully we didn't mess with the fabric of space and time here with this podcast, and all
point.
is still right in the world. It's not like the butterfly effect coming to life here. I'm just crossing my fingers because I don't want that on my conscience.
It's a great point.
Well, actually, we were rated number one podcast to create a mess with space and time. You know.
Yeah, and I heard that we were
by the
yeah
that was from the New York Times, and they know a lot about time.
And I heard on the week of the 24th, like the week in the future, we're recording in the past. We were also rated the number one weekly podcast that week.
You're right,
and we had like 100 reviews that week. It's crazy. We had like 20 a day.
Yeah, we did get 100. Yeah, it was. You're right. That's nuts.
We did surpass 100. Yeah.
You know, I gotta say, I'm proud to be part of the number one podcast in the world, rated by
Everyone.
other podcasts. Yeah,
Sponsor us.
We're actually also one of the things is we've had the most podcast reviews from other podcasts saying that they wish that they had our podcast.
Other podcasts are jealous, and other ones want to be us.
Exactly. So I think that's. Thanks for listening, everybody, and thanks for leaving us literally billions of reviews.
Stay tuned. We're going to try to stay with you now and again through the off season to kind of guide, keep you in the loop. Only the things you need to know. We're not going to bombard you. Maybe we will. We love bombarding you
in the channels.
But we'll keep you posted on all the stuff you need to be aware of in fantasy football for 2019 and beyond. And remember, stay active in those channels out there.
Active in the channel. See you later.
Stay active in the channels.
Well, see you later.
Well, see you later.